Welcome to the Forward Miami Show. I'm your host, Damian Pardo, and Forward Miami is a local nonprofit that produces the Gay Ocho Festival and works on diversity and inclusion. I'm thrilled today to have as my guest Alex Hernandez, who's the managing director of music, sports, and entertainment at First Horizon. Alex, welcome to the show.
Damien, thank you very much for having me. It is equally a pleasure to be on your show today and be able to talk a little bit about some of the common things that we share in common and things that we look to kind of accomplish in our future goals as we continue.
Oh, and full disclosure, I'm the chair of Forward Miami and a colleague of First Horizon. So
exactly.
It's a pleasure.
Makes it even
pleasure to have you here.
Bitter more so special for us. Yes,
Yeah,
thank you.
absolutely. So we wanted to talk a little bit about music, diversity, sports in South Florida, and kind of I thought we'd start out like how you got here, where you came from, like.
So, born and raised here, parents of Cuban descent. I was fortunate. A little bit about my parents. Parents are deaf, and my father passed some years back. So grew up in a household of with deaf parents, and kind of gave me a little different lens of the world, unlike many households. But born and raised, went through public schools. I graduated. Have to represent Miami Senior High School, where I graduated from. And that journey going through public school, during that time of public school and all the way through high school, music became a big part of my what I kind of gravitated. Life took it where I had to end up with a tuba, play the tuba and the guitar. I don't brag about that. And was fortunate enough to graduate from Miami High and then move on and then and spend some of my time, in my schooling with the University of Florida and their School of Banking. But within that period of time, the last 30 plus years, I've been in banking and very excited to be part of the community during that time.
And as part of music as well, correct?
And having within my banking career, music banking has kind of been an underlier of what I've done. And it's one of those things where didn't plan it, didn't go to school for it. It just organically happened, and it kind of started with one. And fast forward, here we are 30 plus years later, and it's become an art of what I do.
I think it's funny because there's a great documentary called Miami Boheme produced by Joe Cardona, but it talks a lot about Miami and the diversity of Miami and South Florida, and how South Florida really, when it came to music in many ways, kind of took off and also helped us blur lines between our communities. And how did you feel yourself going through all that, evolving through all of that?
Well, look, it's first and foremost. I have a older sister. She's about 8 years older than me, and I grew up in a house where during the 70s and the peak of the 70s, I always kidded around. I mean, I called her a DJ group because she always hung out with all the coolest DJs. But I grew up around, and especially during the 70s, during the life of the 70s, the music of the 70s, which kind of had a little bit of a spillover from the 60s. And then fast forward, you kind of evolve into the 80s, and that's a whole other era and whatnot. But if you kind of look at the history of South Florida, Miami in particular, and you kind of go back, I mean, there's soul, jazz, blues. I mean, there's a whole element of music, although we're a new city, but music has always been, and Latin music, of course, has been an integral part of kind of what the music evolution of Miami is. So growing up in that, it's almost been like a melting pot, quite frankly, of absorbing different elements of music and incorporating it into how you translate music in my own personal sense.
I was always surprised that music seemed to bring together Black people, Hispanic, Latino, Jews, Catholics, everybody on the dance
floor. Look, I mean,
floor.
that's the definition of what diversity and inclusion. I mean, to me, music is the universal language. It's something that has no barriers, no color. It's colorblind. Forgive me, no sexual preference. I mean, it's just music is a language in itself, and that's the ideology that I've grown up with and what I do, and especially I apply it to my job. I don't get caught up on what type of genre. Music is just something so universal and so transmitting to me that I gravitate to all types of music.
And so, how did that end up with First Horizon?
Well, it's interesting. When you go back, I mean, it didn't. Today we're part of First Horizon. We're in the midst of the final stage of our transition from Iberia Bank into First Horizon, which we'll conclude with in February. But when you look at how it really started, it was just being at the right place at the right time. I was just a pure banker that had clients that were in the music and sports industry for that matter. And I got a phone call in 2002, if I recall, from a recruiter saying, "Hey, we're looking out of Nashville, oddly enough, we're looking for a music banker to start a music division in South Florida. Do you know of anybody?" And your name was provided to us. And that's really what kind of changed the course of my life. I took the call, I took the meeting, and little did I know that there was such a thing as a bank that truly specialized in the business of music and the clients of music and understanding, the kind of the science that goes with that. And that's where the kind of journey started. It really kind of took a peak in 2003. Um, and I never stopped ever since. And that brought me to Melling United, which eventually Sabadell, and then Iberia, now First Horizon. And that's kind of how the journey has evolved. And that's been the now First Horizon legacy company's been 13 years.
Wow.
Yeah.
And how is it a specialty? Why is there a specialization around it?
So I'm asked a question quite a bit, and the answer is, there's a lot of answers, but the first one is, it's a fraternity, and you are part of that fraternity where you speak the language, you understand
You mean like the technical aspects?
you understand the technical, the business side of it, you understand what goes into the creation of music and beyond. How does that translate into money? How does the money revenue streams flow? What happens when you tour? I mean, there's a whole array of things that go into it. It's not just finance their home or their car or their toys, which is the misconception. And then that kind of takes you into, furthermore, helping some of these individuals beyond the transition, like other business individuals, into their planning, their financial planning, their business succession planning, and whatnot. So, and the more kind of bring it to a kind of the point I'm making is, when you're in the studio and you're with them in this, you have the ear, and I know, because I have an ear for music, of what makes sense and what not, or what may be the next song wonder that's going to be a hit, and what goes into it in a studio, and you can speak. And sometimes they ask you, what do you think? So that element, I think, is a unique factor that differentiates someone like me and some of the team members of mine from your ordinary traditional banker that just handles the day-to-day affairs for some of these people.
And I was surprised to learn that you could have a catalog of songs that are written and then lend on that. So it's an asset. And
It's no different than real estate. I mean, you own a commercial.
I would never would have thought of it that way.
It is not simplistic, but it's no different than owning a condominium with multiple units that pays you rent, and you're able to go ahead and collateralize yourself by, quote unquote, all the units of the catalog, which is every song composition that spins off money, and you're repaying yourself back by the money that it's generating over time.
And I would also think that if you're engrossed, like you're a Maluma, or if you're a sports, pitcher, player, whatever, you're kind of engrossed in your life. So I would imagine that your team has to really go above and beyond in terms of managing, or at least helping, I guess.
Well,
how does that work?
I think the helping part comes in play where, look, I always say, when you don't need your bank, it's great. But when you do need your bank, and when you do pick up the phone call, it's because you either have a problem or you need someone to help you solve, whether it be a timing of cash flow issue, whether it's, I'm going to go on tour and I need to have an infrastructure in place to be able to help me with my infrastructure, or I'm going to need the financing of a next acquisition of a music catalog, or I need to borrow against my future revenue streams because I need to pay the rent. So I think that the helping part is a big part of what we do. Mm-hmm. Look, service is key. I mean, that's the bar none differentiator. We provide no different than we would to any client of this bank that I work for. Service standard, service excellence, and providing the best level of service is what we live for. But being able to react the moment the phone rings saying, I need you, and get things done, and not have to explain to us how you make your money, is what differentiates us from others.
Mm-hmm. And with First Horizon, explain a little bit about the First Horizon identity and your work.
Sure. So I first talk about culture and history. When you go back to the blended company in Iberia Bank and First Horizon, soon to be now First Horizon, You go back, there's really three long traditions. The First Horizon one is a 150 plus year old institution out of Tennessee. It's the oldest bank. Um, the second one brings you to Iberia, which is the oldest bank in Louisiana, which predates the existence of jazz music. It was founded in
Wow.
1887. So 1887. So when you look at long history before time, those two institutions on a combined basis bring a long history. And then you go to the root of what now First Horizon in South Florida, which goes back to United National Bank, the original bank that was founded by Mr. Catcher and some other members of the legal community, professional community, back 40 years ago in Hialeah.
Mhm.
And you kind of look at that tradition. So you look at the companies that we've represented through time, they're long, rich, old tradition. And in translation, mean that we've been in these communities that we serve for many, many years and have been able to evolve with these communities during the course of time as the world has evolved and and time has evolved.
So we know that this industry is really, really competitive. And I was wondering what makes First Horizon or your team different than what they could get anywhere else with big firms or anything else.
I think that leaving aside your basic element of private banking and traditional private banking, whether it be your banking services or your lending services, I think one element that we do bring that really separates us from a lot of individuals is that we do take a holistic approach. And I really do mean a holistic approach because
Mhm.
other
So
individuals
what do you
say,
mean by
and
that?
the holistic approach, I think, is looking at things more in a planning standpoint.
Mhm.
We really get involved in understanding where an individual is at a certain point of their
Why is
life.
that important?
Well, I think it's important for a lot of reasons. I think it's important to ensure that today they have the right infrastructure, the right approach, and the right map to get them to the next level. Then I think there's the element of understanding of where they are today, where they want to be in the future, and where they want to be one day when they stop either performing or playing on a field as far as an athlete's concerned. And then you have the succession piece. It's ensuring that they understand that they are going to leave something behind, whether it's a music right, whether it's their likeliness, or whether it's their some of their assets, and ensuring that they have the right succession piece in place so that if anything changes through the course of time, that there's an element that they have a plan in place of who it's going to go to. And then the final one is the disability side. Things can change overnight. You could you could lose your voice, or you can break a hand and you can't, or break a leg and you can't, conduct your art or your sport. So it's having a plan that if something, there's a life changing event, that they have a holistic view of everything and they have a team that understands it, that can help guide them without recommending, because we're not in the recommending business. We're in the business of simply demonstrating to individuals, here's a picture of who you are, where you are, tell us where you want to go, and we're going to try to help you get there by way of bringing the right infrastructure around you.
I was really surprised at a Maluma concert to hear him say that he knows that this is going to last 5 more minutes. you know,
Well,
and I
that's
was just it impressed me that
well,
he was so aware of his power and its ending. And I was, do you work
well,
on that with your?
well. Look, I think that's more of a psychological
Yeah,
one, and I don't pretend to be a
a
psychologist, but
therapist.
or a therapist. But I do say this: I do believe that in the course of having open dialogue, and the course of quote unquote what we would define planning, is having an understanding and a conversation of, look, at one day, no one wants to hear this. At some point, you are not going to be on a stage at the level that you are today, or you're not going to be on the field or arena at the same level that you are today. That everything, every good thing comes to an end at some point. The question becomes, what do you do in preparation for that day so that when that day does come, you've done enough, saved enough, planned enough that you can continue to live the same lifestyle and not have to alter or go to coaching. Not that there's anything wrong with that, or batting practice, or batting coach or whatever. So those are things that. But I think that mental element, when artists talk as such as a Maluma and as an example, I think it shows maturity, that they are looking at it as a business. They're looking at it where they understand that there's a moment that things are going to change, and at that point, they start thinking about, what do I need to properly plan so that when the day comes, I'm ready.
Well, one of the things I wanted to talk about a little bit about was that First Horizon is sponsoring the Gay Ocho Festival this year, which is the largest diversity and inclusion festival in the country here in Little Havana. And I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about that, about why, what your thoughts are around it, and just in general.
Well, I mean, first and foremost, we are truly excited as an organization to be able to be a sponsor uh, of the Gay Ocho Festival. I think that what comes to mind when we think of, that particular festival and that event, let's call it, I think there's a lot of things. Corporate responsibility. I think we have a corporate responsibility to be involved, uh, not only with an event, but with the community that we serve. And I'll define that. I think that when we think of where we get involved and how we want to have, where we want to help and where we want to be involved, I separate writing a check because you have a corporate responsibility and you have to do something, because that's not the idea that I see. The idea is that we want to be right there next to, alongside, and celebrate with the friends and clients that we work with. That's the difference. And I also think that when you look at the opportunity that we have in a better form than music and arts to transmit our belief and, you know, that we have as far as diversity inclusion through music and arts is the grandiose way that you can do it, because I think it's a universal thing. It's neutral. It's celebrating life. It's celebrating, different messaging, and everybody can kind of adopt to, what they believe in music and whatnot. And finally, I think there's the opportunity for us to support a lot of the emerging opportunities in arts and music that are in South Florida that we hope to see manifest and come and perform and be part of this grand day with families and friends coming together and showcase some of the best kept secrets in town that we see. So I think those are some of the elements that we see. And I think when the opportunity presented itself to get involved with Gay Ocho, the first thing that came to mind is we want to be front and center and present with our friends of the community and clients so that we can all join hands together and celebrate a great day.
No, that's beautiful. And frankly, First Horizon is the first major corporation to sponsor it as a presenting sponsor. So I think the commitment, and not just the commitment, the actual work that's going behind it and being placed in the community is phenomenal. As far as the festival, there will be a First Horizon stage. I understand it's going to be more like emerging market artists or emerging song writers or singers or artists that will be presented on the stage. Do you want to talk a little bit about that as well? Is that almost a gateway thought to what could happen with South Florida? Do you see that becoming more of a trend or more of an opportunity here?
I believe there's two questions in there, and I think we have to separate and we have to separate the two questions from one another. I think the first one is providing a platform or an outlet for any emerging and not artist, musician to come on and perform before an audience and show their art and their talent is something that needs, to me, it has to be manifested and kind of highlighted. And we hope to accomplish that with the stage, that we can have a place where we can welcome some of our clients and friends on a stage to be able to showcase their talent where they otherwise would not have the opportunity elsewhere. That's one. The second part, which is really where I think your bigger question goes into, where does this evolve to? How does it spill over and where? So I think if I had the ability to create a lobbying arm around promoting South Florida, Miami, and doing a better job, I think, of promoting talent, I would be the number one cheerleader, which I am in my job, but I'm not. I have to have a collective body to help me with this. But I think that there is a great opportunity because we are on a change of tide right now as a city. We're going through this rejuvenation that's been ongoing for the last 10 years. And we're finally starting to see a little bit of light where Miami is starting to become that place, whether it be at technology, whether that be it in music, arts, sports, even esports is a big part of, I've talked about it in the past.
Can you say what that is?
Yeah.
I'm not sure I fully
gaming.
understand.
I mean, gaming at its best. I mean, that's a sport in itself, and gamers are considered athletes nowadays. So when you start to think of the opportunity that presents itself, the talent's here. The talent comes here, and I've mentioned this in the past, and I'll mention it again. We're going through this change of tide where what was once Miami, a place where you come, you live, you play, and you leave back to your primary home. We're finally starting to see a little bit of that permanent residency. Companies are coming here. There's different institutions in the music and arts and sports space that are creating hubs in Miami, and I think that starts to lend itself to help better promote the emerging talent. Without emerging talent, there is no future in music and arts.
Agree. I've always been impressed by the amount of people that you will see in Little Havana or Wynwood or many other places in town. The talent that we have locally, either because they're coming from Latin America, the Caribbean, or some other places, and they know they can have a home here. I think we have some of the best, players, whether it's sax or drums or congas or whatever it is. I've always been very, very impressed by our talent level. I imagine it's true of New Orleans, probably true of Nashville. And how do you capitalize on that? I mean, how do you take that energy, which is really grassroots and community driven, and create that pipeline to bring it into your business and create a platform for First Horizon that is national as a talent pool?
Well, look, I think, I believe that when you look at some of the cities that you mentioned, they're cities that have tenure, they have history, longer history than Miami. Even though Miami has been around north of 100 years, it's still a young city considered. Some of these cities have had a long tail and kind of getting to the point that they're at today. Um, I always use some no artist mentioned in Nashville. Nashville was a songwriter community. It was a capital music, and it took a couple of artists going mainstream, more than a couple, to kind of change the view of Nashville. So when you look at Nashville today, that be it still, songwriter capital of the world. Now you start looking at it, and mainstream has kind of entered, and now it's become more of a pop, place, and coupled with country, some other stuff. When you look at Miami, South Florida, we have had plenty of artists that live here today, reside here, world artists that have kind of paved the way and the road for that opportunity to create itself. What I believe that we got to do a better job of, a collective job of, is creating the notion. First off, the labels are here. I mean, the major, Sony, Warner, EMI, and some others, they're all here in South Florida. As far as the Latin music side of it, it's creating a better bridge between the major labels with the community, and looking at the community as a better place to scout. No different than when you think of football. You think of football in particular, the one city that comes to mind is Miami. This is like they call it the breeding ground of football. That ideology has to be transmitted into music and arts. And it just requires, I think, a lot of ingredients. We're heading in the right direction as a community as far as the building. We're heading in the right, continue to build into a modern city with technology and other stuff. I think that lends itself technology.
Let me ask you, do you think there's a role for government to play there as far as being able, in some ways, you'll see Mayor Suarez with cryptocurrency, with other issues. Is there a role for government and for leaders to help heighten awareness and heighten visibility of that effort?
I think it starts there, and I think I believe it's someone that has, at the governmental level, the vision and the buy-in that there is an ecosystem that Miami has and South Florida has all of the variables and all the ingredients needed to kind of elevate the music and the arts to the next level. Unfortunately, and I'll make my non-political statement. Sometimes the sad part in governmental politics is that politicians don't last forever. So unfortunately, because there's an ever changing tide, and government officials coming and going, you might have the right body that has the vision, and then the next body comes in with a different vision. So it's trying to create within that a baseline that there is the ability.
I mean, because when I think of sports, there's been tremendous commitment from government and government funding and government ability to bring funding and attention to the issue and create the facilities in large part.
And no different than that has been accomplished. I think the same effort has to be, that could be transmitted onto music and arts. And again, I think that you have enough ambassadors and you have enough, music entertainers and world entertainers living here, that foundation's been set. It's how do you take that and further, grow it. And it has to be done by way of emerging, further investing into places where the emerging artists have a place to
And
go
when you say
manifest.
emerging, what kind of
Up and
artists?
coming,
Up,
there's a lot of, I call garage artists that are the best garage artists that I've ever met, but they wouldn't even know where to go. They wouldn't even know where to start. They wouldn't even know, and it's not even an element where you go play at a bar, like to your comment about Nashville. Nashville, there's bars where there's 200 bars where you can go and perform. And you might get lucky where the head of A&R of a label might be sitting there having a drink and listen to you.
Yeah.
That is something that doesn't quite exist here. And that's where I think we can do a better job. And maybe it's having a promotion to say to the labels, hey, we're going to have a place or places where you can come hang out at, bring your happy hour of your team and listen to good music. And while you're there, you might be able to pick up your next talent.
Yeah, no, that's amazing. So I'm going to ask you a very Miami question.
Of course.
And it's going to be, or South Florida question. It's going to be, if you had this magic wand, right? And this, you got one ability or a wish, if you want to call it that, to change something. What would you change in the ecosystem of South Florida?
Well, I don't think that there's a lot to change per se, because I think a lot of the work that our parents and grandparents and community leaders over the course of time, they've really done a good job to get us to the road that we're at. So I think that without question, we're at the right crossroad. What I would not use the word change, what I would help promote and want to see more of is better incentives that can attract. And when I say incentive, tax incentive, rebates, they exist today, but I think hiding them a little bit so that it doesn't bring and create, the opportunity from elsewhere to say, okay, well, I can come to South Florida. There's a tax incentive. There's a rebate. There's better rebates.
Are you referring to like some of the Tallahassee pool of money that existed to help
governmental
foster?
That's exactly right.
Films
That's exactly right.
And
it's come and gone. I mean, and let me be clear.
I don't think people are aware of
they're here. They exist. So I want to make sure I clarify. They're here, and I'm not saying that there's not an incentive. I think that you have to hide in them, and you have to create a higher benchmark and bring more dollars. More dollars brings more outside opportunities. More outside opportunities creates jobs and creates, a cycle of what we're talking about. I.e., Georgia has a tremendous tax incentive program around TV and film. Tremendous. New Orleans has it around music.
And why do you think we don't?
I again, that's a governmental question. I can't speak to that. And I think my personal opinion, I think that going back to my statement I made earlier, I think that we've gone through a change of governmental bodies over the course of time, and each governmental body has their personal views or not of what's important and what's not. I don't know, but I think what I do know is that we have a place in South Florida that lends itself for this. And I think with that, you have the opportunity to be able to have more investment into that area.
Okay, well, Alex, we've wrapped up our show. It's 30 minutes.
Thank you very much.
It goes like that.
Yes, sir.
Thank you very much.
No, thank you
it's
for the
been a
opportunity.
pleasure, and we hope to have you back again. And is there a way people can reach you if they need to reach you, just online or?
Best bet is iberiabank.com. You can go into our website, our sports and entertainment website, and there's contact information in there.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
And thank everyone for joining us for the Forward Miami Show. We'll see you again next week.